What would you say to the people of Gaza on the day of judgment? I'm getting emotional.
I could hear the women of the camp chant, and then I began to continue chanting with them, La ilaha illallah wa shaheed Habiballah.
And I think of my jiddo, my grandfather, and the way they were expelled was he was told that he'll be allowed to come back in 2 weeks, travel to Lebanon and stayed there in that refugee camp until he passed away in 2001.
But they are seeking to ensure that they kill Palestinians at their root, remove women from the equation.
The day that you think that your voice does not matter is the day that the occupier has occupied your mind.
Diaspora Palestinians are activists when it's trendy and silent when it costs them. What we've seen happen, particularly over the last 2 years, despite the horror, the atrocities, the injustice that we are witnessing live on our screens, it has awakened the masses. And when I talk about the masses, I'm specifically talking about our own people, be they Palestinian or Muslims and so forth. So there has been an awakening, and it's a good thing, right? So if Palestine caused or ignited or sparked a trend, then we embrace it. And what I've learned, particularly over the last 2 years, is that if you really want to stand for justice, there has to be sacrifice. It has to cost you something. So if you choose to stay or remain silent because you know that you will lose something otherwise, then that's a question for you to ask yourself, am I doing enough? Is what I am sacrificing going to actually allow me to be amongst those who are standing on the right side of history?
What does being Palestinian mean to you, especially while living far from Palestine? I still remember growing up in primary school, I didn't know I was Palestinian, and my parents really didn't instill that early on. So during a classroom activity where we had to let the teacher know what cultural background we came from, I remember putting Lebanon, and then when I went back home, my mum's like, no, we're actually from Palestine. I was like, oh, what's Palestine? And that was my earliest memory of identifying with my own cultural background. But I think that's part of the broader erasure of Palestinian identity as a result of settler colonialism by the Israeli state, is to actually make us non-existent and make us invisible. And that, unfortunately, doesn't just manifest physically, but it also manifests in the mind of generations. And we know, like there's the saying, the old will die and the young will forget, which is almost like a saying that is used to perpetuate Palestinians and Palestinians will be erased by the Israelis.
For me, every day brings a new meaning as well of what it means to be Palestinian. Prior to traveling to Jordan, I had a conversation with my dad on the way to the protest. And I said to him, Dad, I really miss home. I really miss being on my land and I want to go back home. And he said to me, Salah, sometimes your home needs you to be outside of it to be able to give to your home. So I've learned that there is an anchor that remains the same wherever you are as a Palestinian. And you learn different ways to contribute and to give to your homeland. But that anchor, like the zaytun tree, remains standing wherever you are. And that's what I learned when I migrated to Australia.
So this is a map that I was actually gifted by amazing locals within Al-Quds in Jerusalem. Palestine قبل نكبة 1948, which says Palestine before the Nakba of 1948. And the unique feature about this particular map is that it details absolutely every village and city in its original name and form at the time. Because as we know, as Israel occupies Palestinian territory and land, one of the things that they do is they change the name. Hebron is Al-Khalil, for example. So not only are they taking over land and occupying land, they are also seeking to erase any Palestinian element, including in their name.
Is there a part of your identity you feel has been lost or taken away from you over time? As a Palestinian, there are really strong attempts to erase the Palestinian identity, not just some parts of the Palestinian identity. And that's a constant struggle, and more so in the Western society, of course, because you often hear in the political arena, in the social arena as well, that Palestinians are invented people. They never existed before 1948 to a certain extent. And that goes beyond dismissing parts of the Palestinian identity as an Arab, as a Muslim, as a Christian, as a Jew as well. They were all part of the same Palestinian society's fabric. And so what Zionism did, it tried to destroy that identity, to erase it, and to propagate the fact that it's made up. And that's a constant struggle, like I said, especially in the Western society.
This passport belongs to my grandmother, whose name is Adila Mahmoud Sardah, issued before the creation of the State of Israel. From cover to cover, you will never come across the word Israel. You will always see the word Palestine. And here on this page, it says in Arabic, جواز السفر فلسطين, passport Palestine. Even in Hebrew, on this side, it says passport Palestine. In Hebrew, the language that Israelis talk, it doesn't say Israel. It says a passport Palestine.
What do you mourn the most about the land, the people? Or the life that was never lived? What breaks me the most is that we are literally witnessing parallels to what happened over 7 decades ago, but worse. A mother who was pregnant recently, subhanAllah, she was 5 months pregnant, and a bullet actually went right through her womb into her fetus. They had to extract the fetus and remove her uterus, never to be able to fall pregnant again. And that could have been us. That could be us. It could be any of us. And this is what I tell my children and anyone I speak to. These people, yes, were living under occupation. They were living under the most harshest of circumstances, but they were living amazing lives. They had the beach, cafeterias, hotels. They went out to parks. So I mourn and grieve for these wasted opportunities, for the hundreds of journalists, the doctors, the amazing talent that you see, stripped, completely wiped off. Families in their entirety wiped off the population register, gone, never. It's as if they did not exist. This is what we mourn. And when we reflect on the targets this time, the targets specifically children, but women, because they know, despite the grief, the trauma, the pain of losing children and loved ones, they will have children to come later. They will continue. They will bear more offspring. But they are seeking to ensure that they kill Palestinians at their root. Remove women from the equation. Ensure that they do not carry any more children within this horrific period. During these last 2 years, you are still seeing women who are falling pregnant, giving birth, and life goes on. And they want to kill and erase that.
So in 2018, we got the news that Arkan, a young Palestinian who was in Erasure refugee camp in Beit Lahem, got targeted and killed. We were told that there was going to be a funeral, and what happens is that they will take the martyr throughout the camp or the village or the town, and I don't forget this feeling. I was marching alongside the woman in the camp. I could hear the woman of the camp chant, La ilaha illallah wa shaheed habib Allah. And there was a sense of power that I felt ignited in my body and in my heart. And then I began to continue chanting with them, La ilaha illallah wa shaheed habib Allah. And I felt that moment is what gives me power until this day. And then I said to myself, Asala, the day that you think that your voice does not matter is the day that the occupier has occupied your mind.
You know, memories that I accrued just before the genocide, when I was in Gaza, for example, enjoying the beautiful nature of Gaza, the beaches, the family gatherings, the falafel, best falafel ever was in Gaza. And therefore, seeing the genocide unfolding in Gaza in places where I roamed, actually, where I walked, where I enjoyed, it's beyond mourning, really. There's a lot of feelings of trauma, of disbelief, of frustration, disappointment, and that's going to last for a while. The restriction of medical equipment, medical treatment, putting Palestinians in Gaza under diet, restricting the food and medication to go in, counting calories of Palestinians, including myself and my family, just to keep it on the brink of collapse. Not collapsing, under the brink of collapsing. For example, there are certain types of chocolates I'm not allowed to enter Gaza. There are certain types of vegetables or fruits that are not allowed to get into Gaza. And that's by the admission of the Israeli leadership.
Do you ever question whether you're Palestinian enough? Absolutely. Even, my wife would often tell me, my wife's from a Lebanese background, but she'll say, you're not Palestinian enough. And that always played on my mind. It's also part of the experience that being there's no one way of being Palestinian enough, because we all have different experiences living in the diaspora. But reminding myself that that's by design. Again, we can't look at these individual experiences that we have in isolation to the systemic erasure that Israel and colonization seeks to do, to make us feel distant and away from what being Palestinian means. So I think, for me, whilst I think about do I feel Palestinian enough, I just have to look around and notice that the whole world has become Palestinian.
I'm getting emotional. What would you say to the people of Gaza on the day of judgment? I would say congratulations. You're the lucky ones. You're the winners. We are the losers. Allah chosen you to be the front of everything. Allah chosen you to be the forehead of the forces of liberating Palestine. We trust you. We wish and we hope that victory will be on your side in this dunya or the hereafter. People of Gaza have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose. Even if they get all massacred and killed for the sake of Allah and for the sake of Palestine, they have nothing to lose. They are the winners. We are the miserable ones, because maybe we're not doing enough like they did. We're not doing enough sacrifice like we should for our country and for our deen. So congratulations, people of Gaza.
You claim intergenerational trauma, but live in freedom. What freedom? What freedom when you can't return back to your homeland? What freedom when settlements are being built on the graves of your ancestors? What freedom when you are questioned about your identity? What freedom when you don't know whether you can go back home? What freedom when Gaza is being genocided? What freedom when you can't freely enter Masjid al-Aqsa? What freedom when you are holding tight to the bits of soil that you have? What freedom when there is no freedom? What freedom when our bodies are shackled and when our minds are shackled by the occupation? What freedom when there are more than 10,000 hostages illegally imprisoned? What freedom? What freedom? What freedom?